after hiring 4,500 plus virtual assistants in the last 2.5 years, one of the most important things I have found about keeping an awesome virtual assistant and helping your business scale is understanding the culture of the Philippines, because most American business owners do not take the time to understand the Philippines culture. So today, I'm going to take you on a deep dive on everything Philippines. Hey guys, Justin Nelson here, and today we are going to deep dive everything Philippines. The number one question I get a lot of times about hiring virtual assistants is, how do I keep a virtual assistant around? What is the retention like? Is there turnover when you have an assistant halfway across the world? And how do we make sure that we keep that assistant on our staff for as long as possible? So before we dive into that, make sure you guys like, subscribe, hit the bell button so you guys get notified of all of our new videos of everything virtual assistants. But today I wanted to dive into, how do we retain virtual assistants? How do we get to know them and understand them in a culture that we've never been a part of? And so today I just want to cover a few things. Now, full transparency, I have a list on my phone because there are so many talking points. If you see me looking down, it's me checking out what the next talking point is. But the very first talking point I want to have today about how to retain your VAs is, number one, is you have to take time to understand your VA's culture and show that you care about them as a human being and as an actual person in your organization. Now, I am not saying that you maybe haven't taken the time to do that, but a lot of times as employers, we get caught up running so fast and so hard that we forget to slow down and we forget to actually learn about where are our virtual assistants from, who is their family members, right? What are things that are important to them? What are their life goals? And a lot of times we just forget about these things because we don't get to meet with them in person, if ever, if not very often. And so a lot of times we just kind of forget that there's someone on the other side of the computer screen, which honestly is really, really sad, but I also understand why, right? They're not the assistant that gets to go to the bar after work with you and things like that. And so in my opinion, we have to make an extra effort. So let's go through a whole bunch of different tips and tricks. A lot of these are just gonna be things I want you to learn. There's no actually action behind it. And then there's others that are gonna have action behind it as well. So the number one thing you have to understand about the Philippines culture is you have to understand that the Philippines culture is very much a multi-generational culture. And what I mean by that is, a lot of times when you have a virtual assistant that you're paying $3, $4, $5 an hour, you gotta understand that they are usually living in a multi-generational home, right? So, whether it's them living with their parents, them living with their grandparents, or maybe it's the opposite. Maybe their parents are living with them, the grandparents are also living with them, they have nieces and nephews, right? When we have a third world developing country, you gotta remember, a lot of times people will travel super far for work for better opportunity. And so, a lot of times, in the Philippines, we have people working on cruise ships. So you might have a family working on a cruise ship and they left their 4 kids back with some family members who could be a virtual assistant. So you gotta remember that multi-generational households does play an effect on a virtual assistant's just overall life and culture, right? So a lot of times when you talk about, Justin, I heard that this VA said $4 an hour is a lot of money, and then I heard this VA say that $4 an hour is not a lot of money, right? Well, the VA that says it's a lot of money might only be living with just them, right? Maybe their wife, husband, kids, and $4 an hour is a lot. But then you might have someone else that has parents, grandparents, 3 nieces, nephews, their own kids living with them, making $4 an hour. And it's no different than the United States, right? If you had your grandparents, your parents, and everybody depending on you, obviously $4 an hour by yourself would be different than $4 an hour with all of that. And so we have to understand that with the Philippines being a multi-generational household, that many times you're gonna see a differentiation of what they think the proper dollar per hour rate is. All I can tell you is $4 an hour is a great rate. And so with that being said, just remember, VAs are multi-generational households. Point number 3, so remember, point number 1, you gotta get to know them. Point number 2 is generational households. Point number 3 is you have to remember that virtual assistants are kind of like a pinnacle of jobs, right? Whenever people in the Philippines know someone that is a virtual assistant, usually it comes with inherent understanding that that virtual assistant is making great income in comparison to the rest of the country. And so that VA almost becomes like a celebrity. And what I mean by that It's kind of like winning the lottery, right? If someone in the United States wins the lottery, you gotta understand that that virtual assistant a lot of times is under a lot of pressure from people that know that they're making really good money in American dollars. And so I only say this because one of the things we have to do and teach our virtual assistants is when we're paying them an extremely good wage, we have to teach them how to, not only manage that money properly, become financially responsible with it, but we want to make sure that we're developing them as people as well to understand that they don't need to take on the weight of the world. And while they can still have a charity mindset, a lot of times virtual assistants, if they're not helped properly and mentored, will always earn all their money and spend all their money, right? Which there's nothing wrong with charity and giving, but we do have to understand and teach our people sometimes you do have to take care of yourself before you can take care of other people in the long run. So that's point number 3. Now point number 4 is most people in the Philippines, their number one goal is to afford a house, right? In the United States, we gotta remember, many times buying a house has become second nature to a lot of us, but in the Philippines, as a developing country, right, they don't have as much infrastructure, as much loan programs, as much, incentive programs, like first-time home buyer type stuff. Like, it's a whole different world when it comes to buying a home. However, when you think about point number 2, which is most VAs live in multi-generational houses, right, we gotta think about if you in the United States were living with your parents and your grandparents and everybody around you, what would be your number one goal, right? And for most VAs, it is to get a space of their own, right? Space they can call their own, a space that they can do something with, a space that they don't necessarily feel that they have to listen to someone else. A lot of times when you live in your parents' or your grandparents' home, you feel like you have to submit to their rules and what they want to do. And so when we're talking with our virtual assistants about hopes, dreams, and goals, one of the things I need you to understand is that one of the main hopes, dreams, and goals of most virtual assistants from the Philippines is the idea that they can one day own a house. So when we're trying to set goals, we're trying to set savings, we're setting bonus plans, we're setting, objectives, like if our team hits this, you get bonus an extra $1,000 this year. If we start to compare that, right? If you just say you're VA, I'm gonna give you a $1,000 bonus at the end of the year if you do this, right? We gotta understand, what if we said, hey, we'll do X, Y, Z to put towards a future house for you, right? Just a little bit of shift in language can really start to help your virtual assistant connect to your business and really help to make sure that they stay long term with you. The next thing we got to understand is for a lot of people in the Philippines, driving is another massive goal of theirs. When I first started off Sphere Rocket VA, I always heard of these stories coming in from my virtual assistants, and they were like, Justin, getting a virtual assistant job saved me 4 hours round trip from going to work, right? 2 hours on the way there, 2 hours on the way back, and kind of in my young, naive mind of when I first started this business, I was like, oh man, you get in your car and then you drive 2 hours there and you drive that just must be a ton of traffic, or you must be going super far. But then once I actually had the chance to visit the Philippines, I actually thought about something and realized something I never thought was true. It's not that they get in their cars and have to drive 2 hours there and 2 hours back. What I realized was 90+% of them do not have cars, right? They rely on public transportation. They rely on things like mopeds, which obviously are not as economical, or practical if it's pouring rain, if it's flooding. We also find that a lot of times only the head of households will drive around the mopeds, and so we see a lot of spouses and kids having to take public transportation. And so when you're taking public transportation, it obviously increases a massive amount of time. So I share this with you because one of the best things we've ever done for our team members is those that had goals for houses or cars, they would always latch on to goals that help them create savings accounts, bonus plans, compensation plans, where we would save money to help them buy houses, cars, and that kept them around a lot longer and felt more buy into the company because we were understanding their final goals. Another point I want to bring across is that for a lot of us, I get asked all the time, Justin, what is a reward I can give to my virtual assistant? What is something that virtual assistants might want? So when I got my first chance to go over to the Philippines, I flew about 90 of my virtual assistants from Manila out to a little private island type situation where we just partied for a few days, got to know each other. And one of the things I was told is like, Justin, 80+% of our team had never been on an airplane before, right? They had never even left the main island. This is the first time they're getting this experience. And I was like, just out of curiosity, I asked my CEO, how much did a plane ticket cost, right? How much did it take to get over here? And she was like, well, the average plane ticket was like $40 each way, right? And I was like, what? That is so cheap. And so what I realized was, though, is that was a life-changing experience for many of my virtual assistants that they would have never have had the opportunity to do, or most likely wouldn't have had the opportunity to do if we hadn't have done that. And so when we're looking at incentives for our virtual assistants, or rewards, or just gifts, right? One thing we might think about is like, how could I help plan a trip for my virtual assistant that's maybe never taken a plane, never taken a true vacation, right? There are so many Americans that have actually never really taken a true vacation, where again, we understand that work is more than just work, and work is about, producing income to live a life and be able to have experiences. So just understanding that a lot of times we come from our frame of mindset of something we're used to, and we forget that maybe something else could be a great gift, a great reward, a great incentivizer to your team in the Philippines. So being able to incentivize your team to travel, take trips, maybe pay for their hotel rooms, pay for some dinners, pay for a flight, can be one of the biggest life-changing tips and tricks that you can have to help keep your VAs retained long term. The next thing I want to talk about is in the Philippines culture, there's this stigma around something called the 13th month pay. The 13th month pay is something that happens in the corporate world. So if your virtual assistant has ever worked in the corporate world and government basically requires the corporate world to give all of their people what is called a 13-month pay. So if you've been with a company for over a year, at the end of the year, you basically get a whole extra months of pay. It's kind of like a built-in bonus. It can be however you think about it, but it's a whole extra month of pay. If you've only been with the company for 6 months, it's just prorated, right? It's prorated, a whole month of pay divided by 6 or whatever that looks like. So just know that that's a 13-month pay. That is something that's done in the corporate world. When you hire a virtual assistant through a company like Sierra Rocket, the VAs are, what we consider freelancers for you, right? And so while you're not required to do a 13-month pay on them, it is something that can obviously show great intentional effort, great understanding from you of their culture, of what happens in the corporate world, and just shows an all-around care for your virtual assistants that many times employers don't have on their freelancers. And so I share this with you because this is a great tip and trick that when you tell your VAs that you're going to be offering 13-month pay, it is obviously a huge retention tool, right? Imagine in the US, if you're making 6 figures, making maybe 10 grand a month, and your employer said, hey, and if you stick around for all 12 months, we're going to pay you a whole extra month of pay. $10,000 is a lot of money, right? And so it's a great retention tool for you as well, understanding what the 13th month pay is. Last thing I want to talk about is what we call online time. Online time is huge. Online time can help your virtual assistant succeed more than ever in your world. But I'm not going to talk about online time in this video. If you guys want to learn more about online time, check out this video right here, which talks all about electricity, internet downage, and some tips and tricks that you can do to make sure that you keep your VAs around long term. So with that being said, just wanted to share a few things about the Philippines culture that came across my mind that I wanted to share with you guys. So as you whether have virtual assistants, you're going to get virtual assistants, we are here to help you with that. And as always, if you don't have any virtual assistants and you're thinking about getting some virtual assistants, make sure to check out the link down below, which has our calendar where you can schedule a time where we can show you how we can help not only find, train, and hire the best virtual assistant that you are looking for to help you and your business scale through leverage. So with that being said, Justin Nelson here, CEO of Sphere Rocket Virtual Assistants, and can't wait to see you in the next video.